it's MLS decision week and Toronto FC enter the regular season finale. Everything to play for as they remain front and center in the Supporters Shield race. My name is Mitchell Tierney. This is Waking the Red Weekly presented by Footy Talks, and ahead on a big edition of the show, Kristian Jack of TSM will stop by to talk all things Toronto FC and Decision Day 2020. And of course, a big show means a big intro, and I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Jeff for his incredible work putting all of that together. Jeff, people are going to expect stuff from us now. I hope you know that.
That's fine. I'm up for the challenge.
The bar is raised. I'm great, guys. It's we're here. I can't believe we've already played like a full MLS season somewhat. Sorry, Supporters Shield Foundation, but yes, a full MLS season somewhat. And we've made it. The shout out to MLS, shout out to Toronto FC, shout out to everyone involved who's been able to put this together, because it's shaping up to be a very, very exciting week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's get into it, because with our kickoff segment here, taking you through the biggest news for Toronto FC in 10 minutes or less. It's pretty easy this week. Decision day looms. Toronto FC needing a win or a draw. If they win, they need Philly to draw or lose. If they draw, they need Philly to lose in order to lift their second Supporters Shield. Guys, how are we feeling? We'll start with you, Jeff, going into the final week of the MLS season.
That goal differential hurts. I mean, that tiebreaker hurts. There's no way we're bettering them on goal differential. So it's fairly it's an easy path to the Shield. Philadelphia loses, we win, it's ours. I listen to a lot of podcasts as a sort of prep for this show, and the general feeling is that Philly, it may have gotten into their heads. They've been here before, one game to silverware, and they've not failed. They've not made it. Sorry, they failed every time. So it could be something endemic. And it was interesting because while I was watching the Columbus, I was watching the Philly-Columbus game, and I can't remember who was calling it, if it was our guys or if it was American guys. I think it was Twellman, actually, who said, Columbus's big issue culturally is that they fall apart at the end of the season, and they were doing it, and then they sort of bounced back. And Philly's cultural issue has always been that they're always the bridesmaid and never the bride. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, definitely, but I still think it's Philly's to lose. Has to be.
And that being said, shout out again TFC, because they're in this position. They grinded. They picked up a huge 3 points. When was that? Sunday night, I think, against Inter Miami. It wasn't easy by any means. I mean, it was a good come from behind victory, but again, this team found a way to win. I feel like that's sort of their identity this season. It's just finding ways to win. But it should be a fun week. Like, this decision day is sort of made for this. Like, this is why MLS kind of pumps up this day, is because things like this can happen. Different scenarios can play out, and it's just great to be in the mix. And from a TFC fan perspective, that has to be fun, exciting, and you have to be kind of grateful for that fact.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to mention. Another grinding win, their 11th one-goal victory, which Martin Bailey, of course, mentioned. Half of the games Toronto FC have played this year have ended in a one-goal Toronto FC victory. So that is a bit of a talking point going in. Obviously, we mentioned the goal difference, and that's the tiebreaker here, and why Toronto FC needs. It's not directly in their hands whether or not they'll lift the Supporters Shield. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, again, going into the playoffs, we've talked about it a little bit. Is it this, more that they're able to grind out results, or more that we should be concerned that they're not doing more to make sure, they're winning more, I guess, comfortably?
A win's a win is a win. Do you know what I mean? 3 points is 3 points. I forget what stats we made better, what records, what franchise records we may beat. Is it points per game and goals per game? Or I know one
goals against per game.
Goals against
per game, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. Michael, you can take it from here.
Yeah, no, defensively, TFC have been on point. And, Quentin Westberg has been stellar as well at the back. But the biggest question mark, it's kind of funny because the biggest question mark coming into the season is how good is this team going to be defensively? Can they, shore up the back? Are they going to be able to start up the counterattacks? And now I feel like that problem's kind of, I don't want to say it's thrown out the window because I feel like this team at any given point, for whatever reason, they could have a brain lapse. But they've at least comforted us in that sort of, question mark there at the back. And it's shout out to Eric Zavaleta.
Absolutely. Shout out to Eric Zavaleta.
Jeff's emphatic about that one.
Well, he's been so good, man. He's been so good.
Yeah, no, and he's obviously our whipping boy. So for him to be able to step up there, we got to give him some love. I also think Laurent Simon, he deserves some credit too. Obviously, he wasn't, the greatest in those two matches earlier or last week against Philly and New York, but he's a great passer, and for a third center back, fourth center back, like I can't complain about Laurent Simon. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
We know how producer Kev feels.
Producer Kev definitely feels different than you.
Kev, you're saying you disagree?
But I think that's a good point. That going into the playoffs, and we saw this last year, Toronto FC, they were able to grind it out defensively, and that was kind of the difference. Was maybe on the day they played some better teams. You look at New York, you look at Atlanta, and they were able to at least keep themselves in the game, and then get those moments. That penalty against New York, the De Leon magic against Atlanta. That's most of the time. That's how you win playoff games. People forget, but even that 2017 team barely squeaked by the New York Red Bulls. They barely squeaked by Columbus Crew. Playoffs are just tough, and Toronto FC's shown themselves once again in that Miami game. They can win tough matchups, and they've done it against some of the best teams in the league.
We also showed once again giving away soft goals to get people's accounts opened. You're welcome, Blaise Matuidi.
Hey, that's a fun little shot. I think KJ pointed this out on the broadcast. Did you guys know that Quentin Westberg and Blaise Matuidi both, came out of the same academy? We're actually
Claremont,
teammates, I think.
Yeah, Claremont, I think. Yeah,
Clairefontaine, yeah.
Clairefontaine, sorry.
Yeah. And they were actually teammates, I think, all the way back in like 2005. So it's pretty crazy to see this come full circle, 15, 16 years later, and Blaise Matuidi's opening his account against Quentin Westberg. I'm sure it's a special moment for those guys, especially Matuidi there, and who had hit a pretty funny Sully.
Yeah. Producer Kev is very active on the chat today. Did Bradley think Matuidi's shot was going wide? I mean, I think you kind of have to ask Michael Bradley. So let's get to work on getting him to be a guest on the show.
I like where that was.
Yeah, turn it back on producer Kev.
Yep. What were we talking about? Sorry, I used up all of my mental gray matter getting that Kevin shout out. So.
There's too much to talk about, man. And I also, before we bring on our special guest here, I want to give a little shout out to Ralph Priesto, who made his first start there in the midfield, first MLS start, in place of, quite interestingly enough, Liam Fraser. I thought Priesto was absolutely fantastic, and just forgetting his age, I thought he brought something else different into the Toronto FC midfield, and that was some energy, some legs, some movement. And the thing about the next gen, these kids that are coming up, they're different, man. They have more composure on the ball. They think the game a lot better. It's all about mental now coming up. And every touch that Priesto takes, you can tell it's so calculated and moving forward. And he's a fun one to watch. And I just think Bradley and Fraser together, they didn't look great. They didn't look like they offered TFC too much energy there in the midfield. And I thought Priesto kind of changed that dynamic completely. So he had a great game, and I don't know, I'll shift over to you guys and get your thoughts on him.
Did you think that he maintained that standard of greatness throughout from the kickoff to the end of his time?
So I actually thought he started off really well, and I thought he kind of eased off a little bit, and then I thought he finished really strong. And then towards the end there, when was it Fraser getting ready to come in, take him off, I thought he didn't look too great. I thought his legs were kind of dying out on him, but for the most part, like, I thought he was great. Mitch, I know you're dying to chip in here.
I won't say too much because we actually have Kristian here ready to go, so we'll bring him on momentarily. But I will say I do think that as much as I like Liam Fraser and we'll defend him till the end, Priesto just brought more balance to the midfield. But we are now joined by Kristian Jack from TSN and of course Footy Talks Weekly. How you doing, Kristian?
Great to have you. Great to be with you guys. How's everybody?
Fantastic. Well, I'm
Great,
actually a
Kristian.
giant pile of existential dread, but that's besides the point.
That's not maybe soccer related. But
Yeah, no, it's not soccer related.
Something else going on today?
I don't know. Yeah.
it's the Forge Tauro game, of course. But
Of course, lots of soccer going on, guys. Champions League afternoon coming up to distract us. So it's whenever you need it, soccer's there.
That's a good point. Kristian, I did want to get your thoughts. Of course, we are going into decision day, and a big game for Toronto FC, of course, from a supporter shield perspective, but also for me from a momentum perspective as well. Getting some of those injured guys back, and even just the momentum going into the playoffs. How big of a game is this for Toronto FC? At Red Bull Arena.
Yeah, I think it's big. I think it's big to continue the momentum coming off Miami. I think what we saw was the first half again wasn't quite good enough, and then in the second half they're able to build up. It's a grind. It's a real grind to try and find out what you can get here. I think we're evaluating every team, probably in the gaps between 70% and 90% of what they can get. I don't think anybody can really expect anybody at this point to get 100% out of everything they've done when you throw in the long season that they've had. Certain teams have injuries. So, how much of that 70 to 90% can you get in these games? And I think we've seen it get lower than 70 in a couple of those games, particularly the Philadelphia game. And then now a little bit, you're just trying to push up. You're just trying to squeeze the maximum that you can possibly get out of it. And a chance maybe for a few other players, maybe Jonathan Osorio, who would be key to try and get back in that game. And we saw Mavinga come back. And I think when you can see some of these significant pillars of the team get minutes, that it makes a big difference. I think as the Miami game showed, these games are close, real close. You get a game there of a team that many people think are the best in the East, in a game with an opponent playing who may not even make the playoffs, and just look how close that was. So, yeah, it's a bounce here, a bounce there. If things don't go your way, you could be out of the playoffs pretty quickly. So I think it's a bit of a preview to what we're going to see in November and December.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting times, and Kristian, a lot of the Toronto FC's depth have stepped up. We've heard a lot of different stories come through this year, and none later than Ralph Priesto, of course. I guess not so much on Priesto, but more so the kids themselves, namely Jaden Nelson, Jaquil Marshall-Rudy, and Ralph Priesto. How good can these kids get? Like, what is the ceiling for these kids? Because they look like they're comfortable right now in MLS, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've looked very comfortable, Michael. And, I would say that they should look comfortable because they belong. And I think that, this is not meant as a negative, but I think Greg Vanney and the entire culture of the club is naturally reserved and conservative in the amount of minutes that they're giving them, because I think that they don't want to put them in positions where they're going to fail. So they have, they've also got a lot of strong competition. So they've not been like another team that is not consistently putting minutes out there for these young players because of that. So the competition's there. But when they've been given those opportunities, and you mentioned the players, I think they feel like they belong there. And there's an element of fearlessness about these players that brings a little bit of freshness to the team as well. I think that's really important. They don't fear anything. They shouldn't fear anything. And I think, ultimately, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of a regular season of MLS. We've got soccer. We've got games. And they should go out there and play with a smile on their face. You've got to have a culture of high performance. It's got to be one that you enjoy. And what these young players do, you can see they belong. You can see that they're comfortable. And more importantly, when you talk to the teammates, they know that they belong and they can trust them too. They're not looking at these players, even like a Nick DeLeon, who's a fringe starter. You talk to him and he says these guys are bringing so much to the team, energy in the training, and they're competitive when they get the minutes. So I think it's really crucial for any fabric of football when you've got young players coming through. Talk about Champions League. I was watching a game a couple of days ago, an Ajax game where, they got an 18-year-old playing in midfield, a 20-year-old playing at centre back. And, if they're doing it in the Champions League, why can't Toronto do it in MLS? I think you've got to do it. You've got to give these players opportunities to shine and continue to put them out there. And obviously you still want to win trophies and go for, supporters' shields, but you've got to have that kind of pathway through now. It's very important.
Yeah.
Interesting time.
Perfectly segues to my first question. How would you rate the TFC Academy with respect to MLS as a whole?
Well, I think, they've got a tremendous amount of resources there that some MLS teams don't have. So they've got, a step up on some teams already. I think that, what we're seeing now is, I think we're starting to see an example of what I would class as being the Greg Vanney era at the academy starting to get a bit of fruition. People would say, well, the Greg Vanney era started 6 years ago. Yeah, but I think, Greg Vanney would come in and, look at those players at a very young age and see what they can do. So, look, as I said, I think it's a real delicate balance when you're a team competing for trophies and how often you give minutes. You look all around the world, unless you're teams like Ajax or Porto, who then it's just the absolute fabric of your club because you bring them in and you sell them on. Then, if you're at Manchester City right now, for example, they've had a ton of injuries in the Premier League, but there's not a lot of players coming through aside from Foden. Delap's got his chance up front and now and again, but they know that they're evaluated on winning games. And I think that that's what they have to look at TFC. But I do think, as I said earlier, it's important that they get these players in there and they start to have an opportunity to play these players consistently. And, that's the way that professional soccer should be in this country. And it's can only help the Canadian soccer, going forward, hopefully that these guys get opportunities.
Yeah, certainly. We've seen a lot of Toronto FC players out recently, but I think they've felt the strain of none more so than Jonathan Osorio. How critical has he shown himself to be this year in the lineup and that midfield, and I guess his maturation as a footballer as well?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mitchell. I think he's a marvelous player. I still think that he's, extremely underrated in MLS circles. You don't get people talking about him in the United States. I've got my ballot this week to start preparing for MLS awards, MVP, best 11, and I've got a bunch of players here that I've got to decide how I get them in my best 11. And there's about 20 players I've written down. He's one of them. I might not get him in there. I don't know yet, but that's how good he's been. For me, he's been one of the best midfielders on one of the best teams in Major League Soccer, and it's just everything that he does. It's not just about with the ball, it's his ability to find space. He makes players better around him. He's stepped up this year in an enormous leadership role as well, which I think shows a lot about his maturation as well. He's gone through a lot over the last few years in terms of working out his own game. I think Jonathan Osorio's story would go back to, everyone talks about that marvelous two-legged tie against Montreal that has been the biggest chapter in the history of Toronto FC. But Jonathan Osorio was pulled off at the Olympic Stadium at 3-0. He didn't get to start the second game, and he's had a lot of those times where he's had to work on his game and have that decision of what's he going to become. And I think he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for self-reflection, which is not easy. And for me now, he's so intelligent, and the other thing is I think he's very, very vertical in his thinking. He plays the ball quickly, move it forward. Delgado brings the legs and the energy, but I think Osorio brings the intelligence to the midfield, and I think it's significantly lacking when he's not there. There's no other player like him in the team. So you can't say I'm going to put Ralph Priesto there and ask him to be Jonathan Osorio. He can't be. He's too young. There's nobody else who plays the standard that he can do. He can play as a 6. He can play as an 8. He can play wide on the left if you ask him to. So. I think he's had a fantastic season.
And you see Ozo stop mid-sentence, death stare straight at the Montreal players. That's just the type of person Osorio is, and that's just the type of energy and culture that he brings to this team off the field. He hates losing, and he wears it on his sleeve, and that's why he was the captain, I guess, this season for a lot of this time for Greg Vanney. And his maturation off the field is just as impressive as it on the field. So I want to highlight that. But another thing I want to talk about, Kristian, with you is, of course, Ayo Akinola and the story that he's been. And, I think we don't get these stories a lot, where kids are undecided which country they're going to play for, Canada, USA. Do you have any idea which way Ayo's sort of leaning here and why?
I can't. I'm not going to come in with any massive exclusive. I can't pretend to know anything. I know that he feels very much Canadian. I know that invitation went out to the Canadian Soccer Association through his agent at the time. He subsequently changed agents at the time in January about potentially playing for Canada in the Olympic qualifying tournament. That was extended to Canada by his representatives in January of this year. That tells you a lot of what he was feeling at the time. I mean, there's no other way about it. I also know that at the time, nobody was calling Ayo Akinola. United States, Canada, nobody was giving him a call, right? So then he's performed well and he's shown them what he can do. And now he's on the radar of John Herdman and he's on the radar of Greg Berhalter. So it's a tug of war. And, ultimately neither of them are going to win. Iowa Canola's going to win. He gets to pick, he's going to get to decide where he goes. And it's a big decision for him. Both John Herdman and Greg Berhalter feel very confident. I know that, speaking to them, I know that they feel confident that they're going to win this. So we'll figure it out. I think Iowa Canola has been very intelligent in the fact that he hasn't publicly committed to it, because I do think he knows. And I just don't think it's important to talk about it right now, because his concentration level needs to be solely focused on his club. And if he starts getting involved in that and discussions about that, then he's lucky that right now there's no squad's been named. Even the United States named their squad this morning, and there's no MLS players in there for obvious reasons, because they don't want to take them to Europe because of the issues with quarantine. And so he hasn't had to make that decision. But I do believe he has made it, and we'll just have to figure out what that will be. But right now his sole focus needs to be on TFC, because quite frankly, he's become an absolutely enormous piece in this club. And if Iowa Canola got hurt tomorrow and was out for the season, then I think you could pretty much say that this club's not going to win anything. Because without Iowa Canola and without Josie Altidore, as you guys all know, you don't need me to tell you, they're just a completely different team.
Yep.
Definitely don't need you to tell me that.
Yeah.
No. But KJ, I'm really curious about this. For you, what was the exact moment that you felt TFC went from meh to yeah?
Wow, it's a really good question, Jeffrey. This season, you mean, or
no? In general, like, was it bloody big deal? Was it?
No, I've got the answer for you.
Okay,
I thought you meant this season.
We can do this season too.
No, from there to yeah. It's a good question. For me, it's the Philadelphia game, the first playoff win at home. That's, for me, is the moment that and I've spoke to a lot of people, Michael Bradley and Vanny and Greg Vanny, a lot of people about that, is that the relief after that game was palpable. It was just the franchise needed a victory at home, and they knew they were a good team, but it was a really good opponent for them, because they played a team who'd never done anything either. But they went into that game really nervous, and they knew they had to win it. But in a game like that, where anything can happen in a one-off match, if they'd lost that game, I don't think we would have been sitting here talking about the success that they've had since. I really don't. I mean, who knows what would have happened? They may have figured it out, but it sped up the journey a little bit. It got quicker, and then obviously big things happened after that, and the Montreal series was enormous, and then obviously the 2017 MLS Cup win was massive. But I do think that win over Philadelphia, where Javinko and Altidore were enormous that night, was huge. You could go back to October 14th, 2015, the Javinko goal against the Red Bulls, which for me remains to be the most special goal for the club, the way that it just woke everything up and they got their first playoff berth. But I think it was the game against Philly for me that was the big one that turned around the franchise.
Awesome.
What about you guys? What do you guys think?
I think for me, the Philadelphia one's a good show, but I'd almost say the second half of that Montreal game that same year, 2016, at Olympic Stadium, the Big O, where they're dead in the water. They're down 3-0. They'd lost the year before to Montreal, and that ability to claw back 2 goals, Bradley scoring that big goal, and to give themselves a chance in that second leg. I think that changed everything, because say they go out to Montreal another year in a row, then all of a sudden there's a kind of a boogeyman situation there with the impact and even with the club's confidence. And I thought that was just big for them to, give themselves a chance. And then we all know, of course, what happened at BMO Field in the second leg.
Yeah. For me in macro, it was signing Seba at 27, 28. It started a trend where we were actively looking for, I don't want to say distressed assets, but certainly players with a chip on their shoulder that wanted to prove something. And it's kind of an aesthetic that we sort of we scaled up. I mean, a lot of the players over the last couple of years have had that same kind of MO to some degree.
Yeah, I'd sort of agree there. Sorry, Kristian, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Carry on, please.
Yeah, I'd say I'd sort of agree there with what Jeff's saying, but take a back a step further and say even Michael Bradley and, bloody big deal, Jermaine Defoe. I know obviously he didn't turn out to be what TFC fans hope. I know he wasn't on the field as much as TFC fans hoped. But that sort of moment there signified that this club was a real, that they were the real deal. Like they were bringing in stars, and Michael Bradley was what, 26, 27 when he came in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but again, like that was someone in their prime. I know Defoe was probably about like 31, 32 when he came in Toronto FC. Still a class goal scorer with Tottenham and in the Premier League and everything that he did. So that time was it piqued my interest as a general Toronto FC fan, and I think that turned the corner for what the club, I guess, showed in the coming years.
Yeah, I think they're all good shouts. You talk about the bloody big deal. I was in Seattle that first game that they did with Defoe and Bradley, and after that, the eyes of the club representatives and everybody else covering us, we were just like, wow. What has this become? Because you said from meh to it wasn't even really meh before. It was a lot worse. Maybe that Seattle game was a little bit of a meh. Okay, because it was a little bit of a false dawn, but that day was like, wow. There were people thinking this team's going to win MLS Cup. They went to Seattle and it was just, but obviously things didn't pan out with Defoe on that one. But that was a day when you went, wow, this is, and the Giovinco shout's great too, because the thing about Seba was that, he was a culture setter.
Yep.
And that's the thing about Giovinco. And he didn't even do it. He didn't even know he was doing it, but he did it. And, that's what it makes it even better, I think. He set standards very high that other people had to follow, but he didn't do it in a way where he lost his time and he lost his patience with other people. He still knew that he was the best player in the league, and he needed to show some kind of sympathy for teammates and build them up in his own way about it. But I go back to October 14th, 2015 a lot, because one of my favorite things I ever wrote was about that goal that night. Well, obviously everyone talks about the Bautista backflip. But Sebastian Giovinco landed on the airport that day. He flew in that day. He played in Italy the night before, and he landed that day to play that game and score that goal. And as I said that night after I wrote it, Toronto FC had spent millions of dollars on DPs who couldn't wait to go back to Europe the moment they got a chance. And here was a DP who couldn't wait to come back from Europe when he didn't even need to make a difference. And that was the culture that he set, and that was the difference, and that's obviously that, Giovinco, I think, that's why he goes down as being the biggest signing in club history, undoubtedly for me.
We have a question from a friend of mine across the pond, and it's one I wanted to ask. KJ, if England were starting a fresh league from now, what are the best bracket different things they could take from the MLS?
Wow. If England was starting a fresh league, what could they take from MLS? Well, I mean, the competitiveness is the fact that, I think the Premier League, the way it is right now, is one that we're all enjoying because it's really unpredictable. I did a show last night, as I do on Monday nights for Sirius, and I was doing some research. But 12 teams in the Premier League this season already have won a game and then followed that game with a loss. And some teams are not even eligible to do that because they haven't won a game yet. So that's, a huge bulk of percentage of teams. And I think we see that in MLS. Some people don't like that. Some people like the Goliaths roaring all the time and having the big teams winning all the time. But I think the unpredictability of MLS can certainly translate to the Premier League. That would be nice. There's a lot of things I think MLS could learn from the Premier League the other way around to try and get it more competitive and bring the value of the games. But I do think that if they were setting up a league tomorrow, they would look at how do you sprinkle the revenue around a little bit more? How do you have that franchise model a little bit more, the unpredictability a bit more? Look, that's never going to happen. It's just not going to, because of what they've created. But I think they could definitely learn from that a little bit. I think that's the main thing for me is probably that.
Yeah, and the end of best 11's not just being a whole bunch of forwards and wingers, but an actual side that can play.
Can we just stick a fork in that and get it back? Like, the MLS, I follow them on social media, but it's great. But I want to, like, I don't know, I'm not smart enough to do this, but like mute like words like best 11, like just stop this nonsense. Like, like if you're a centre back and you're getting a best 11, you probably have to score a goal or something. Like, it's always a back three. There's always like forwards playing on the wing. There's 5 forwards in the team. It's just
What, you guys don't like the bench? You guys don't like the 7 players that they name on the bench as well?
I can't say I knew that. Like I said, I paid very little attention to it. But yeah, stop naming 7 strikers in a best 11.
Yeah. George, I don't know if we have time to talk about KJ's favorite band cast this episode.
Nice.
Okay, let's do you still rate Cast as your favorite musical group, and why isn't it Suede and or Pulp? Or is Sheffield's finest Wildman the Pump Man?
Wow. Yeah, I can't say that my conversations with Wildman extend to music. Maybe that's although Wildman's more of a Lionel Richie man, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I don't want to see him dancing on the ceiling, but he does a bit more of that. Cast is all down to my first time. People say you never forget your first love. Like that was like I went to see them live, and I was doing a little bit of work then in the newspapers. We got a bit backstage, but it was a small venue in Blackburn, and this was not like going to watch the Verve in the park in Wigan or going to watch Oasis and stuff like that. This was like the real small venue, and they just absolutely blew the doors off the place. So yeah, so for me, that's why it's always them. And yeah, it's great.
We're fans. All Change is a great record, man. So
nice. I love to talk about guys. Very few people know Cast in Canada, so it's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
even people that I've worked with who consider themselves music buffs, they don't really know them because they don't think they ever went international too much, but you guys might know more about that than me.
Yeah, I mean they were birthed from the Laws, so everybody knows the Laws, right?
Yes, of course.
Then you just gotta make that quick. Will Dunn asked, and this is another one that's probably an essay answer, but where do you see the MLS in 10 to 20 years time?
Where do I see it, or what would I like it to be?
Either or.
Can we have MLS 1, MLS 2, and MLS 3 with relegation and promotion? That would be be amazing for me.
Convince the owners that have spent tens of millions of dollars.
I don't know whether I could convince owners they can do what they want, but I would first of all start by saying, don't worry, you're not losing your franchise. I don't want a promotion relegation system like you don't need to have USL teams trying to get it promoted. If you finish bottom in the MLS 3, you're not going anywhere, lads. Like, don't worry about it. Like, if that's what you want to do and you're content with that, then you keep spending your money to finish bottom in MLS 3. That's fine. But for me, that's what I would do. I would love that. I would have a 3-tier league system where you encourage and you have playoffs to get in as well and relegate and promote. And then you also have the teams who win MLS 3 go into a playoff to try and win MLS Cup as well. And they just get a different seeded factor. So at the end of it, there's still a priority for them to chase that as well. That's what I would love to see. I think that it's not about copying the European model. It's just as I've said consistently on a lot of the shows that I've did, and the Supporters Shield argument kind of brought this back up again. For me, it's bringing real value to every game is the key for MLS now. Every game has to matter. We just watched the Premier League game yesterday. Fulham versus West Brom.
I thought you were going to talk about me beating Michael's team, but that's fine.
Fulham versus West Brom yesterday. And it's it's the beginning of November, and it's a massive 6-pointer, and it means everything for these teams. But relatively speaking, that's not the case here in Major League Soccer. And whether it's a good thing or not, I know this year's different. But DC United, where are they? 13th out of 14 in the East, and they still have a chance to make the playoffs with 1 game to go. Yeah, which is crazy for me. So for me, if you want to bring that competitive value into the league, just stretch the markets a little bit and pull it and get the games going, and that's certainly what I would like to see. I don't know what you guys think, but
KJ, you giving that some thought, eh? You had an answer ready. I like it.
It's one I've been asked a few times. Yeah, I mean, I'd like more time to think about it, Michael, to be honest, but really plan it out a little bit. But who knows how many franchises are going to be in it? But I think there's a way to do that, and I don't think it needs to be. You don't need to have 34 regular season games. You can just make sure everyone still plays the same amount of games and figure it out. There's different ways to do it. And I even think this year, I think we have to be careful that we're just not falling into this pattern of like, oh, well, first plays 8th, and then that's what they need to do. Like, there's so many other areas you can learn from in terms of like, should first maybe play second and say you get, first place second, or first place the top 4 play each other. So the 2 teams from there go to the next round after that, and then you have a winner. It can push forward. We're going to go to a playoff round. We're going to go to a playoff round after the international break here, where teams are not going to play for 2.5 weeks. And then the teams that come back are going to play, and then maybe have to play 4 days later. And I would say that might be an advantage to them. It might be an advantage to the teams in the one-off playoff round that have already played to play again 4 days later against one of the teams that they won't be favored to beat, because they've just played and they've had a game. Well, teams like Toronto FC are going to sit around for 2.5 weeks, obviously trying to get healthy, but no competitive games for 2.5 weeks just because they've been one of the top seeds. And I think it might be a disadvantage.
That's a great point.
That is a very good point. Absolutely.
Yeah, before we let you go here, KJ, we have a segment on the show called the Michael Singh Injury Update, which unfortunately has become a long part of the show in recent weeks. We were wondering if you could fill us in on the latest on the number of Toronto FC players that have been sidelined of late.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me about my own injuries. So.
We can do those as well if you want.
I need to hear that too.
I've got an injury with my ankle at the moment. So, you can put me on the injury report, but that's a permanent issue. So, you mean TFC players?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Osorio might be trying to be ready for this week. I think that's important that they try and get him back. I don't think Delgado's going to play. I don't think Piatti's going to play. Altidor's not going to play. Who we're missing. Mavinga did play. It's a long list, I suppose. Am I missing anybody else? I think that might be the key ones.
I think you covered that.
I think the key ones that we're thinking of. Yeah, Delgado, Piatti, and Altidor. I think that their best aim now is to try and play that game, which will be probably in 3 weeks. So, yeah.
That'll be the first time Josie Altidor kicks a ball or in a game action in what, two months? Something like that, right?
I mean, Roberto,
if he's not even going to play
his last name, but will we see Josie again in 2020 was a question we just got asked.
Well, I think if he's injured, if he's healthy, then you have to have him.
Of course,
playing.
Yeah.
Whether he's going to be ready to play or not, we'll have to find out. I think what we've seen with the emergence of Ayo Akinola, which is an enormous savior for the club this season, is that right now, if Akinola's healthy, he's going to play. Yep. And I don't necessarily think in a playoff game, as much as they've experimented with it, if Altidor's ready to go, I would be surprised if both of them play from the start. That's my take in terms of in a big playoff game where you need to be congested and you need to win that battle and you need to win the midfield battle. Are you really going to play, if they're all available, Piatti, Pozuelo, Altidor, Akinola? I don't think you are.
No, I agree.
Well, as I mentioned off the top, an exciting week for MLS. Thank you so much, Kristian, for getting us set.
Thank you so much, Kristian.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, guys. Keep up the great work. These shows are really important. It's love to see the soccer conversation carry on during the week. It's never just about the games. So we appreciate you. Keep it up, and we'll chat soon. Thanks again.
Cheers, KJ.
Thanks, KJ.
Awesome, thanks.
Cool. Great stuff from KJ, man.
Yeah.
About that Akinola there's no chance Josie Altidor starts over Akinola right now. There's no chance.
No.
And even them playing together, like I know Vanny did try it when they were healthy, but they honestly didn't look great when they did play together. I think we can think back to Columbus. That's when Josie Altidor got injured, I believe, when he pulled was that against Columbus? It was after Josie Altidor, I think, got injured is when TFC started to make their full-fledged comeback. So again, I don't think you can just go back if Altidor is available, you start them. I think Akinola's earned his spot on this side as the team starting striker going forward. And even if you do throw all them. Yeah,
I love seeing him and my boy Patrick Mullins play together. I thought that was an interesting look.
I didn't know what to make of it, man. And Vanny kind of talked about it after, but it's because Miami was playing in sort of 5 at the back, and they're kind of giving TFC that space. So we kind of want to add that extra striker into the mix, and obviously things worked out the way they did. Hayo Akinola brings down that ball from Patrick Mullins and does wonderfully with it. And I kind of want to touch on that goal a little bit before, because I know we do want to talk about it a little bit more before we close off here. But just that goal quickly, we've talked about on the show before. Ayo Akinola's size, he's getting that respect. He's not going to get that call against him just because he plays such a physical style, but he plays it within the lines, but within the rules of the game. You don't see his arm extended. You don't see him going out to grab anyone. Like, you just see him kind of easing his way over there before the defender kind of just flops. So all day on that Akinola, and just
all day on that goal, man. That goal was fantastic.
All
he
day.
Took it on the chest and then volleyed off his first touch off the chest. I mean, I'm a happy pappy with that goal. I have a question, and I heard it mentioned, and I can't remember which podcast, but someone had basically called the Michael playing with Liam Fraser in the same midfield experiment over, and I don't know if we're there yet.
We probably are. We might be. It might be over, honestly, because look, well, first off, I think Osorio and Delgado are coming back, and then I don't think you're seeing it again, at least not in a starting capacity. I also think Liam might be done. I don't know. I have a piece coming out shortly on Waking the Red with more on how I think Toronto FC's kind of mismanaged Liam Fraser this year, and there's a lot I could get into on that, and I don't think it's I don't think we have the time. I think we have more important things to get to this week, but I do think, the Bradley Fraser experiment's done. I think rightly so. I think they're just too similar, and they just kind of step on each other's toes a little bit in the midfield.
And that's the thing, is that they're too similar. They're both not quick enough. They're both great passers, great touches. They both do great work behind the ball when we don't have the ball. But when we're on the ball, there's just not that option going forward. And for a team that already lacks a number 9 with Akinola out, I mean, that was excruciating to see, because at that point TFC are just kind of shoring up, and they're trying to defend the game as opposed to trying to go out and win it. That being said, if TFC do need to defend a game, I still think I'd love to turn to Fraser and Michael Bradley there in the midfield, because they do bring that sort of assuredness there in their passing and in their ability behind the ball. But I just don't think starting the game like that, I think that's just inviting pressure, and I just think that's not inviting some bad news.
It's not breeding success. Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there's better options now, especially with Osorio coming back. I'm still not convinced Delgado's coming back, by the way. I still have question marks about that. So keep an eye on that. We'll try to get some more info out of Vanny, but we'll see.
Do you think there's any smoke to the fire of the Vanny to LA Galaxy rumors?
Wait, what? I didn't even hear that.
LA Galaxy is missing a coach. Greg Vanny played most of his MLS career.
But are you starting this rumor now?
No. It's been bandied around.
Okay, there's nothing to that.
Yeah.
there's nothing to that.
All right.
I'm 100% confident Vanny's going to re-sign with Toronto FC. It's just, a matter of dotting some I's, crossing some T's.
Because in the last 2 days, I mean, Brian Schmetzer's also contract is up at the end of the year. His name has also been thrown around as a potential LA Galaxy coach. So is Keener. They want to bring him back as a coach.
I saw Keen, yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be John Herdman. But no, I don't. I think Vanny would honestly be silly to leave Toronto FC at this moment for the LA Galaxy, who are a club just not in a great way right now.
It's a mute conversation. I don't even
usually where there's smoke, there's fire, and certainly 5-10 years ago, LA Galaxy is a marquee club. They're not now, but 5-10 years ago,
Toronto FC is a marquee club in MLS.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. 5-10 years ago, it was a little bit different, but
that's fair.
With that being said, we did all laugh when they said Bezbachenko to Columbus. I know that wasn't a lateral move like this would be, but we did all laugh at that, and then all of a sudden he was with the Columbus crew. But I do think this is.
I remember laughing about Seba at Al Hilal until he was on a plane. So
okay, but hold on. Did Seba both come out and say that they're going to resign, and they're going to resign? Has Ali Curtis come out, or the GM at the time had they come out and said that they're going to resign? Is Bill Manning's come on publicly saying that they're very close? Like this is a mute conversation. Vanny's re-upping in Toronto. I think he's said he's where he wants to be. his family's here. He has four kids. It's just
it's not happening.
It's not happening.
Okay.
Jeff had to get one more pot stir in before the end of the show there, but very, very quickly, let's talk about it. Toronto FC, New York Red Bull. I guess there's really two games we're keying in because there's also New England versus Philadelphia Union. Two things stand out. Union have not lost at home yet this season, where they will be playing New England Revolution. Revolution not in bad form though, and they also, as far as I know, they're towards the bottom of that automatic playoff spot position, so they're going to want to win that game just to make sure they don't have to drop into those play-in games. Red Bulls have not been great lately. 2 wins in their last 8 games. Of course, they drew Toronto FC with that screamer from young Caden Clark. But what are you guys' thoughts on decision day and how it shapes up for Toronto FC?
Red Bull's always a dicey proposition.
Yeah,
Red Bull's final day of the season.
Always.
Yeah,
always.
Just has to be a way too. I saw that when they first dropped the year. I'm like, this is not going to be good. Something about it, man.
Yeah. So I mean, Red Bulls, it's chaos. And how do you predict chaos? You just sort of hold on to your chair and enjoy the ride. And I think that's sort of what
3:30 p.m. Sunday. It's change up, man. We've been used to some night games. We're gonna have to change our routines, change things up. Maybe they'll bring some positive mojo to TFC. Maybe they'll bring some negative mojo to Philadelphia. That's what we're hoping for, right?
Is the Philly game at the same time, or is
every game's at the same time that day?
Of course, it's decision day.
Yeah.
Decision day, JPN.
I forgot about that one very important factor of decision day. That's going to be wild. 3:30 Sunday. That's going to be wild, Styles. Knock on all the wood, right? Let's hope TFC get the win, Philly sputter out, and we're lifting a manhole cover.
There you go. As we've said, huge week ahead for Toronto FC. So great to have Kristian Jack on. I mean, that was an awesome discussion. Every time I listen to that guy, I learn something new, and today was definitely no different. Again, huge shout out to Jeff for the new intro. That was awesome. Huge shout out to Michael for being the star of the new intro.
Got you guys there.
And of course, thanks to Kevin and Sophia for everything they've been doing behind the scenes. I think this show just keeps getting better week in, week out. So hopefully we're peaking at the right time, and hopefully so is Toronto FC. So as always, thanks so much for watching, listening, and interacting. Till next Tuesday.
Namaste.
Cheers.